Hey, today I'm going to be sharing my accepted art portfolio for the fall 2024 semester. Before getting into the actual portfolio, here's the list of schools I applied to. I got accepted to all of them except for Parsons, who I won't hear back from till April. I received merit scholarships from most of the schools, so here's the amount each school gave me from most to least. I applied to all these schools for the fall 24 semester. For any schools that didn't require a foundation year, I applied as an illustration major, except for LCAD, where I applied as an entertainment design major. For any schools that offered it, I also chose to apply early action, but never early decision. Okay, portfolio time. I'm going to share this in the order that I actually submitted it in. I kept a mock portfolio in Google Slides to look at and test orders, which I highly recommend. I won't be reading out the descriptions I wrote for each of these, but I'll show them on the screen if you want to pause it and read them. First is a pretty simple self-portrait. I felt like having a piece about me and my preferred style as the first one was a good way to start. This piece was originally done completely in Photoshop and looked way different. However, in late summer, I realized I didn't like the character at all and completely overhauled it in Procreate. Next is just all my figure drawings. This is slide 1 of 3 for figure drawings. I kept them all edited together and at the start so they didn't take up a huge presence in my portfolio. This first slide is all the figures that took me the longest, aka the 40 to 90 minute ones. These two are the 30-second to 5-minute ones. These two sets are from a figure drawing course I took January of my junior year, which is something you should definitely do. It's basically a portfolio cheat code. The third set are studies I did on my own, so they're untimed and also a bit ugly. Some of these are from life and one from a photo. The first real piece, and also my first attempt at background art. I was really proud of this for the first few months after finishing it, and I think it was a stronger part of the portfolio. This was the first full illustration I did for my portfolio, and that's because it wasn't originally meant to be for it. This was a kind of random, and now a bit embarrassing, comic about death I did in April of my junior year. Something to note about my portfolio in comparison to many others is that I only included work from my junior year and even early senior year. I'm aware a lot of people have great work from their early high school years, but I personally just didn't, so all my work here is super recent. Anyway, this piece was first finished in Procreate, but when I got closer to submitting everything, I touched it up in Photoshop. Now, probably the piece I'm least proud of from my portfolio. I actually attempted to redo it in August, but liked the original better. I also kept it because of a note about my good use of value from a MICA admissions advisor, which I'll talk about later. This was created right after trying to speedrun Patrick O'Keefe's studies. Before either of those pieces, I took his class on visual storytelling and it was super helpful. Even if I don't like these pieces now, I know they were significantly better than they would have been without that class. Now, a clear example of my backgrounds before that class. I actually still really like this piece, though I struggled to find a color palette. I obviously simplified the shapes, but it's somebody taking down Pluto from the solar system model. The name and concept were kind of inspired from a line in a fan fiction that I hope nobody catches. This piece was another one that got a bit of a makeover later in the summer, and that's a lot of the reason I'm still happy with it. These are some sketches for the Death comic from earlier. I created this portfolio mainly from the guidelines that ArtCenter gives, as they're my top school, and they seemed pretty heavy on concept work. This is here in the portfolio as I wanted a heavy dose of full illustrations before showing concept sketches. I also wanted to break up all the digital with a bit of traditional stuff. That's why the next photo is also some traditional concept. These are some sketches I did as part of a pre-college program I took at SVA. I'm actually really unhappy with the final piece for this, but I thought the sketches showed a lot of variety, as well as some use of color, and thus it ended up here. In the middle of my traditional haul, I put some digital concepts for that bedroom piece. Patrick O'Keefe's course had you do some value thumbnails before the final piece, which I thought showed I put some thought into value and concept before jumping into a full illustration. Ending the traditional work for this portfolio is some still life / observation of this plant and the desk it sits on. These were kinda last minute and also not totally intended to be part of the portfolio, but I ended up happy with them. It also sort of showed that I can use pen and pastels, at least somewhat. Back to my beloved digital. This is another one that wasn't intended for my portfolio. It was done as part of my summer homework for AP Art, and I ended up loving it enough to put it here. Most of my pieces took a lot of time and planning, but this one was basically done during a caffeine haze at like 3 a.m. The second, more comic-ish piece. I really love green and purple, so I automatically still love this one. It's all about how going on HRT made me enjoy the doctor's office, so I tried portraying that environment as something happy or exciting. This piece went through a ton of revamping, and I'm still not too sure how to feel about it. First off, this piece is about how I used to have a gap tooth as a kid and got it fixed, and now I miss it. The piece was originally done in June and looked like this. Then, like a week into my senior year, I realized I actually hated the whole piece, but especially the colors. So I redid it with the same palette, but a desaturated version and a whole new composition. But I still didn't like the colors. I ended up going with the colors you see here, but I'm a bit sad I didn't go with one of the other color schemes I tried, since I still kind of prefer them. Though, composition-wise, I really like this one. My main point here is that if you have a piece you don't like and have the time, move on from it for a couple months and come back later. Actual life-saving advice. This one was half real observation, half not, though I definitely called it observation in the description. I drew directly looking at my desk, but took a photo of my cat because there is not a universe where she stays still for that long. I'm super happy with this one, even months later. I think the colors are pretty accurate to real life while still being appealing. I kept the lines loose and messy, but overall readable. To close off, one last digital piece. This was my first real attempt at painting in Photoshop. I think the background and foreground came out well, but I still haven't figured out drawing characters in Photoshop. I'm not going to talk too much about this piece since I have a whole video on this one. I use this piece as a closer on every portfolio, since I think it's pretty all-encompassing of my skill. Now, my extra pieces I use to apply to LCAD, as their entertainment design major had some requirements the others didn't. I had 3 extra artworks that were all personal works I thought fit. The first 2 were these character concepts / renders that were for my webcomic work in progress. Third was this pirate ship layout that I used for the D&D campaign I run. These were all placed right next to each other and right before the final illustration. And that's my portfolio. Now, I want to close off by giving some advice to people in the art college application process. First, I'm going to share my academic stats and also classes / courses I took in prep for applying. I'm a very below average student. I have a 2.8 GPA and I didn't take the SAT or ACT. I've had very middling grades all of high school, but my junior year I actually picked up a bit, so there's a possibility that colleges saw that improvement. My essays were definitely not the best, and I still got in, so definitely try, but know that that's not really what the schools care about. But if you want to see my essays, I am going to link them and my portfolio below in the description for anybody curious. Most schools maybe do the Common App essay, but some colleges had specific prompts, so I ended up with 4 pretty similar essays. Now, classes / courses. From January to March, I was in 2 once-a-week courses. The first was a local figure drawing class that ran from 9 to 6 p.m. on Tuesdays. I was very tired, but it was beyond helpful, so please take a figure drawing class if you haven't. The second was a pre-college course at SVA. It was illustration-based and a 10-week course that was every Saturday at 1 to 3 p.m. The course was graded pass-fail and I believe provides college credits. From April to May, I took a second pre-college at FIT. This one was fully based around building your portfolio. Even though I didn't use anything I made there in my actual portfolio, it was still helpful. It was also 7 hours long, which I still find a bit crazy, but I made some really cool friends there, so it was an overall good experience. I also took some online classes. I previously mentioned Patrick O'Keefe's visual storytelling course, which is pre-recorded and a pretty good bang for your buck. From August to October, I took Cat Si's color and light class, which she does, I think, twice a year, and it was super helpful, and had assignments I think I got a lot out of. I'm the #1 vouch for this class. If you like environmental art, please take it. I also want to mention portfolio reviews. A lot of artists hype up National Portfolio Day. I didn't go, but I had a friend who did, and she very much recommends it. There's also a similar thing you can do online called the AICAD Portfolio Reviews, which lets you select colleges from a certain list, then upload like 5 pieces and get reviews emailed to you a couple weeks later. Here's what my reviews look like if you want an example. Also, some art class places host reviews for their students where an advisor from a college will come in, talk about the school, then look at your portfolio. I attended one of these. I wasn't actually part of the school, so I should not have been there, but I got some good advice. So if you go to one of these places, try seeing if they host reviews. In terms of choosing a top college, if you're curious about what the workload looks like for any given college, I highly recommend finding people who are currently attending that college on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Seeing exactly what you'll be doing can be an amazing resource. This also ended up benefiting me a lot in a different way because the summer before senior year, I followed a ton of incoming freshmen and sophomores from my top 2 colleges and made a ton of super cool and talented mutuals. A couple weeks ago, I posted to my story looking for input from students from those colleges to help me decide and got a ton of good info because I already had a database of these people. Also, if money is a worry for you like it was and still is for me, something to consider is that art schools generally have a lot of money to give. Some places like SVA are for profit, so they don't give you as much or any money in scholarship. But most American art schools, in my experience, love to give you money. They also tend to be very open for negotiation about your aid. I've heard a lot of people, specifically from ArtCenter, say that they were able to appeal their aid and get enough money to attend. Next, when I started my portfolio almost exactly a year ago, I was watching a ton of accepted portfolio videos and realized my art just didn't stack up. If this is you, I want to grab you by the shoulders and say nothing will improve your art quite like developing a college portfolio. You have to learn so much so fast that it's just a speedrun art improvement. If your art isn't good enough now, which I bet it is, I promise it will be by the time you submit. I'm also a very digital-oriented artist and really don't know traditional at all, and that worried me a ton when I was building my portfolio. While I recommend you at least have some traditional stuff in there, I hope my portfolio can serve as proof that all your major/full pieces can be digital and you'll still get in. Obviously some colleges, like RISD, put more emphasis on medium variety than others, but for me, my totally digital portfolio worked just fine. I recommend making a checklist of your top school's portfolio requirements, since it made my workload seem a lot more digestible. And that was most of the advice I have. If you have any questions about admissions or portfolios, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. Finally, for anyone curious, though not fully deposited yet, I'm almost certainly going to be an ArtCenter College of Design Illustration Entertainment Arts student this fall. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful and good luck on your portfolio.